This happened last summer when a couple of my friends and I decided to go camping by a lake in upstate New York. You know the type of place: miles of woods, no cell service, just trees and water as far as you can see. During the day, it was perfect. Sunlight glimmering on the water, the smell of pine trees all around us, and that heavy summer heat that makes you lazy. But at night, the whole place changed. The first night we sat around the fire, laughing, roasting marshmallows, telling dumb stories. It felt safe. But the second night, I couldn't sleep. It was hot in the tent, and I felt restless, so I got up around midnight to cool off. I decided to walk down to the lake, figuring I'd splash some water on my face. The moon was full, casting this silvery glow across the water, and there was this strange fog that had rolled in, like a blanket, low and heavy, clinging to the lake. It was so quiet I could hear every ripple, every insect buzzing in the grass. I stepped into the water, just ankle deep at first. It was freezing but refreshing. As I stood there, I started to notice something odd. The water was rippling, but not from me. It looked like something, or someone, had just stepped in on the other side of the lake. At first I thought it had to be one of my friends messing with me. I squinted, trying to make out the shape through the fog. That's when I saw it. A figure, just barely visible, human-shaped, standing still in the mist. I called out, "Hey, is that you?" But the figure didn't answer. It didn't move, just stood there, dark and motionless. Now, here's the part that makes my stomach turn even now. I was staring at this figure, convinced it was one of my friends, when suddenly it sank. Slowly, without making a sound, it lowered into the water. Gone. No splash, no struggle, just gone. My heart started pounding. I splashed back to shore, stumbling on the rocks, practically tripping over myself. I spun around, flashlight in hand, shining it across the foggy surface. Nothing, just the water, smooth and calm. When I got back to camp, I shook my friends awake, panicking. They swore none of them had left their tents. I checked. Every single one of them was in their sleeping bags. The next morning, I went back down to the lake, and that's when I noticed something terrifying. Only my footprints led into the water, no one else's. To this day, I don't know what I saw that night: a trick of the fog, some hallucination, or maybe something older, something that's been in that lake long before we ever camped there. All I know is I'll never go swimming in the dark again. One summer, my cousins and I decided to explore part of the Smoky Mountains during a family trip. We'd been hiking for hours when we strayed a little too far off the trail. That's when we found something we weren't supposed to. There, in a clearing surrounded by tall grass and brambles, stood an old wooden cabin, half collapsed, roof caved in, vines crawling up its sides. It looked like no one had been there in decades. Of course, being dumb teenagers, we thought it was the coolest thing ever. We crept up, daring each other to peek inside. The windows were boarded up, but the door was hanging on one hinge, slightly open. The smell hit us first: mildew, rot, and something sour like spoiled food. Inside, the floor was warped, and the walls were stained dark with water damage. But what really made us freeze was the chair, a rocking chair right in the corner, moving back and forth, slowly, back and forth. There was no breeze. The air was heavy, still, humid, yet that chair creaked as though someone had just gotten up from it. We stood there in silence until my cousin tried to brush it off. He whispered, "It's probably just the floor shifting." That's when we heard it. A voice. Low, hoarse, coming from the back of the cabin. Just one word: get out. Every single one of us bolted. We didn't even shut the door behind us. We just ran until we made it back to the trail, our hearts hammering in our chests. We tried to find that cabin again the next day. I swear we retraced every step, but it wasn't there. No clearing, no vines, no cabin, just endless trees. To this day, I don't know if that was some kind of hallucination or if that cabin only shows up when it wants to. This happened to me last July when I was driving cross country alone. It was around 2 a.m., and I pulled into a rest stop in Arizona to use the bathroom. The lot was empty except for one car parked way at the end. Its headlights were on, but nobody was inside. The rest stop itself was one of those old, run-down ones, flickering fluorescent lights, peeling paint, and not a single sound except the buzzing of insects. When I walked inside, every step echoed. It felt like I was being watched, but no one was around. I did my business, washed up, and came back out. That's when my stomach dropped. The car that had been way at the end of the lot, it was now parked right next to mine. Still on, still empty. I froze. My gut told me not to check, not to look too closely. I jumped in my car, locked the doors, and started it as fast as I could. When I pulled onto the highway, I glanced in my rear view mirror. The car followed, headlights glaring, staying just a few car lengths behind me. I pushed the gas harder, heart racing. The car stayed right with me for almost 10 miles. Then suddenly, without warning, it swerved off onto a dirt road and disappeared into the desert. No signal, no hesitation, just gone. I drove another 3 hours that night just to be sure I wasn't being followed. I never saw the car again, but I can't stop thinking about it. Who was inside? Why did they follow me? And what would have happened if I'd gone to look when it was parked beside mine? Last summer, I worked as a counselor at a kids' summer camp. We had about 20 campers, all sleeping in tents lined up in neat rows. The first few nights were normal: bug bites, homesickness, the usual. But one night, around 3 a.m., I was woken up by whispering. At first, I thought it was just the kids messing around. I got up, unzipped my tent, and walked between the rows, telling everyone to quiet down. But the whispers didn't stop. That's when I realized the whispers weren't coming from the tents. They were coming from the tree line. It was faint at first, almost like the rustling of leaves, but the longer I listened, the clearer it got. Low, fast, overlapping voices. Not English. Something else. It sounded like chanting. I was frozen, trying to process what I was hearing, when one of the campers screamed. I rushed over and she was sobbing, saying someone had reached into her tent and touched her arm. We searched everywhere. Nothing. No footprints in the dirt. No sign of anyone in the trees. But every single kid swore they'd heard the whispers too. The next night, half of them refused to sleep. And honestly, I didn't blame them, because I'd heard it too. This one happened last August when I was staying at my grandparents' farmhouse. The house is old, surrounded by cornfields, and since there's no AC, we slept with the windows open. My room faced the backyard. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up with this horrible feeling, like someone was watching me. I rolled over, groggy, and that's when I saw him, a man standing outside the window, just standing there in the yard, not moving, staring straight at me. I screamed for my grandfather, and when he came running, the man bolted into the cornfield. We grabbed flashlights but found nothing. The next morning, though, we found footprints in the dirt beneath my window, large, heavy boot prints. They led from the field straight to my window and then back again. We never saw him again, but I'll never forget that feeling, waking up to find a stranger watching me sleep